All right, a minute. I'm still looking at, I'm trying to go through the test topic questions right now. Um, um, hey, Ben. Okay, so I have the test loading on another tab. I'm trying to, I get that done so that way I can see it. My first announcement for everyone who cares is that I did in fact update SIS. So I put all the grades up on the in the computer, and a lot of people are still missing stuff. So let's try and get that done because the 9 weeks is ending soon. So it'd be great if we could get that taken care of. Make my life a little bit less stressful. As of right now, Ben, it looks like I'm only talking to you. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to make it through all these questions real quick. While I'm doing this, my first question for you is, were you able to read the thing, the paper I just texted recently? I don't know if it's even legible. It's in my chicken scratch handwriting. So there's that. Oh, E is a graph. Okay. Okay, because I can start going through this, but I also wanted to make sure I touched on any of those topics on that sheet that you had questions on. And if there's anything that we're still confused on, I want to make sure I address that because I don't want any confusion. I want everyone to be good. The most profitable level of output. Oh my goodness, what on earth was I thinking? Okay. Okay. All right. That's 10 of the 25 questions. Oh my goodness. Okay. So this is what happens when I give you super short notice that we're going to do the live review, because I think I gave you like 2 minutes heads up before I started the video from the time I sent the text. But that's okay because it's late and I didn't want to be up all night doing this, especially since there's the SAT tomorrow and we have a test on Thursday. I have to proctor the SAT. So even though you guys don't have to do that, I have to be there. I'm going to assume you can hear me okay because Ben is answering my questions in the chat box, so that's good. I want to start with Unit 3 is, I think, in my opinion, most definitely the most difficult unit of all 6 of them. Every other unit takes knowledge that you already have and just applies it in a new way. This is the only one where you have 100% totally new knowledge that it's a little bit difficult conceptually. So that being said, there's 7 topics within this unit that we cover, and I sent you guys the bullet points. Like if it were me and I were making flashcards, these would be my points. Okay, these would be my topics that I'd have to know or understand or be able to apply. As you go through them, if you understand something, it's wonderful. Don't waste your time studying that. But if there's stuff you don't understand, then make sure that's what we are learning. Because the true test of knowledge is when you know what you don't know. you can identify what you don't know, and that way you can try to make sure you're studying well and using your time wisely. I don't think it's a review session if I don't have my Dr. Pepper, right? Okay, so here we go. The 7 topics are the production function, that's productivity, measurements of total productivity, marginal productivity, and average productivity, short-run cost curves, long-run cost curves, profit and profit rules, profit maximization, firm operation in the short run and the long run, and 7 is perfect competition, the market structure, perfect competition. So those are the 7 topics. If any of those topics are a struggle for you, or if you want me to talk about any of those topics in detail, let me know and I can go through any of them. About the test, I was just looking at it a moment ago, and I just flipped back to it right now. So right now I'm looking at the test, and there are 25 questions. 24 are multiple choice questions, and 1 is an FRQ, if I'm not totally an idiot. Shut down. Okay, I'm going through each question and looking at the topic. Just I'm reading the questions to make sure. All right. Current price. Okay. All right. 13 and 14. And then I'm going to start going through these. So that way, I'm sorry, I know I'm wasting your time. I don't want to do that. Short run firm behavior. Okay. These are the first 14 I'm looking at. Supply curve. Okay. All right, so that's 1 through 14 out of the 25. I'll look up 15 through 25 in a moment. So that way I can maybe at least start answering these. Okay, so, all right. Profit and perfect comp, please. I'm really confused in general. Likewise, good to know I'm not alone. You're not alone. Everybody's really confused. Economics is hard. Economics is really hard. So I think everyone is confused, and all of a sudden you'll get to a day where something makes sense, and then all the pieces kind of click together. But getting to that day is difficult. So, all right. So I will start with profit, because you said that one first. So profits to an economist are different than profits to an accountant. So you have to remember that when we're looking at economic problems, that when an accountant talks about profit, they only talk about their explicit cost, their revenue. So they care about how much money they made and how much their bills were, and that's it. Okay, to an accountant, that's your profit and if revenue minus cost. But an economist doesn't only care about your bills. An economist also cares about this concept of opportunity cost and sacrifice. So it's not just the profit that you made by selling your product. It's also all the costs, the bills you had to pay, in addition to all of the foregone money that you could have made if you did something else. So you have to factor in your opportunity cost when you're trying to determine whether or not your firm is earning a profit, breaking even, or incurring a loss. Now, when you earn a profit, you are earning money above and beyond your economic costs. If you break even, to an economist, breaking even is meeting all of your implicit and explicit costs. So when an economist says that we're breaking even, when an economist says we're at long run equilibrium, it means not only are we covering all of our bills, but we're also covering all of our opportunity costs. So we're still super, super good place to be. When an economist says we're losing money, that does not necessarily mean we're going to shut down immediately, because to an economist, an economic loss means sometimes we still can pay our bills. So you have to remember that an economist just views the whole concept differently. It's not the same as an accountant. All right, so that's the first step, is understanding that just because you're losing money, every firm in the market is not going to shut down, and just because you're breaking even doesn't mean that there's a better alternative. Breaking even means that you've covered your opportunity costs, so you're in a phenomenal place. Now, with regards to profits, one of the things you have to memorize is the rule for profits. I feel like I'm green for some reason on my screen. Okay, the rule for profits is total revenue minus total cost. So to find your total profit for a firm, you need to do your total revenue minus total cost. I'm not roasting accountancy. I'm just saying it's different. It's just different. Okay, so total profit, the formula to find total profit is total revenue minus total cost. And this is how we find our total profits. All right, total revenue minus total cost. Now, what I want to stress to you is that the formula can stay the same. So total revenue minus total cost equals total profit. Marginal revenue minus marginal cost equals marginal profit. Average revenue minus average total cost equals average profits. Format's the same. You just have to change the change what you're comparing to find your profits. But there's that. Now, the next step of profit is memorizing the profit maximization rule. This is the one I always tell my kids should be tattooed right here across your forehead. Every time you look in the mirror, you should think of this rule, because it's going to be the answer. When in doubt, make this your answer. If you don't know, always choose MR equals MC, because that is profit maximization. And the goal of majority of firms is profit maximization. It is not the goal of all firms, but the majority of firms want to maximize their profits. So MR equals MC. Let me check. Oh, look. Okay. I had an email, so I just wanted to check what popped up on my emails. Profit maximization is found at MR equals MC, or we look to MR equals MC because the marginal revenue is how much money we make off of the last unit we sell, and the marginal cost is how much it costs to produce that last unit of output. So if we can produce where MR equals MC, we are going to be in a place where what it costs us to make the very last unit is the same as what people will buy it for. So we have actually maxed out all our possible revenues. If we produce before we reach that point, we're leaving money on the table. And if we go beyond that point, if we produce more than that, our costs have exceeded our revenue for that unit. So now it costs us more. We're actually going to be losing money. So that's why MR equals MC is the sweet spot. That's the place to be. Now, if MR equals MC is not exactly where we can achieve, what we want to do is get as close to it as possible while revenue is still greater. Once cost is greater, we've lost money. So that's not something we want. We want to be where revenue is equal to or greater than MC. That's the goal for profit maximization. Ben, let me know if that helps with profits. And then if it does, I'm going to go on to perfect competition. My hair's bothering me. I'm seeing no comments, so I'm going to hope that's okay. All right. Yeah, I think so. All right. If not, make a list of questions, and you can ask me before the test starts on Thursday, anything that I don't cover. Or as you go through and you're studying, come up with a bullet list of this. All right. Good job. Mariana, I thought of you when I updated SIS. I thought you would be happy with me and not asking me every day what your grade is in my class and me telling you to just add it up and do the math. All right. So now let's talk about perfect competition. Perfect competition is important to achieve an understanding of because it is guaranteed to be an FRQ on the AP exam, and it's it's the first of the 4 market structures that we learn. What I hope you understood when we saw the perfect competition graph is how important understanding your cost curves were to the graph of perfect comp. Now, one of the things about perfect competition to know is that perfect competition is the only market structure where we actually are going to have to draw the side by side 2 separate graphs. Because for perfect comp, you have the graph for the market and you have the graph for the firm. So you have that industry graph, all the Hershey Kisses, and then you have the firm's graph, just your one Hershey Kiss that you have to sell. So we have these 2 separate graphs, but what happens over here in the market dictates so much of this individual firm because this firm has to take whatever price the market decides. So whatever the collective over here is doing will absolutely control your one company. And that's one of the key factors of perfect competition. They are the price takers. They have no control over anything because there is no barriers to entry or exit, and there is an identical product, and there is God, I just blanked. Oh, a lot of buyers and sellers. So you really have no say. You have to do what everybody else is doing, and that's the only thing that is an option for you. So that being said, in a perfect competition, I gave you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bullet points that will kind of tell you all about the dictations of perfect comp and how it runs. But what we need to understand about perfect comp, number 1, the price is set by market equilibrium. So whatever is happening in that market graph on the left side, wherever supply and demand is, that equilibrium quantity and equilibrium price will pull across, okay? So that intersect of supply and demand will pull across and create the price that you have to charge for your one company. So your price is the market price. Now, if you remember the math we did together in class a few days ago, the price is the same as your demand curve because that's what people are willing and able to pay. Remember, demand is what people are willing and able to pay. So price equals demand. And because, yes, I can show that on the graph. Actually, I already have it written out on this paper that I sent you. Okay, so here's my market graph, and you can see my supply and demand curves right here. Supply going up and demand going down. This equilibrium price is pulled across and turns into the perfectly elastic demand curve for the perfect competition. It is a horizontal line. Yes, I'm going to regraph it over here because I'm going to draw on top of it again. So axes with the quantity and price, and this is my market. I call it a market. The packet I gave you called it industry. You can call it either. Both are correct. I do think on the exam it will be called market. Okay. Demand, supply, quantity at equilibrium, price at equilibrium. Okay. So here's your market graph with supply, demand, quantity, and price. Okay. Pretty straightforward. We did all of this in Unit 2. Now what happens is that this is the market for Hershey Kisses. You have no say over what the price of your Hershey Kiss will be because you have to come meet me at the market price. Otherwise, you will make no sales. So I'm going to pull it across, and it turns into a perfectly horizontal line. Now that horizontal line is your price, okay? But it is also your demand curve because demand is what people are willing and able to pay for your product, all right? And if you remember the math from Monday or last week, I can't remember which day it was, when we did I think it was Thursday last week, when the price for every unit is exactly the same, the average revenue you get from selling a subsequent unit is going to be the same. And the marginal revenue from every subsequent unit is going to be exactly the same because the price is increasing by the exact same amount every time you increase your quantity. So the change in price or your change in revenue is the same. The change in total revenue is the same as the price. And the average revenue, the average revenue is going to be exactly the same as well, because you're increasing by the exact same number. So if you add 5, if you have 5 divided by 1, and then 10 divided by 2, and then 15 divided by 3, if your price is 5, it's always going to be the same. It's going to equal 5. So that was in the packet we did together. If that still doesn't make sense, go through and do the math again and again, and you will see that you will always get the exact same number, because the price is constant, because it's perfectly elastic. So MR equals D equals AR equals P. So we call him Mr. DARP. And we call him Mr. DARP so that you always remember to label him with all the letters: MR, D, AR, and P. You want to label all 4 every time. Don't forget one, okay? Now, this is our perfectly competitive revenue curves. We have all of our revenue curves, but I don't have my cost curves yet. So I need to add my cost curve. The first cost curve I'm going to add is my MC. Now, my marginal cost curve, my MC curve for a firm, is the same as my supply curve. If I started at my AVC and followed that line up, it would be my supply curve. So that's where the firm's supply curve comes from the marginal cost curve. So ultimately, I get, and my profit maximization rule, remember, is MR equals MC. So the quantity my firm is going to produce is where MR equals MC, right there. Okay. Now, the only thing I don't have on this perfectly competitive graph is my cost, my ATC curve. And that is important because my ATC curve is going to determine if I'm making a profit, if I'm breaking even, or if I'm making a loss. So if I'm making a profit, ATC is below my price. If I'm breaking even, long run equilibrium, ATC is at my price. And if I'm making a loss, ATC is above my price. So wherever I put that ATC curve on my graph will tell me a lot about this company and what state I'm in. It'll tell me if I'm in the short run, if it's above or below, or it'll tell me if I'm in the long run, if it's at MR equals D equals AR equals P equals MC equals Q. So if ATC touches all the things, we're at long run equilibrium. Okay, so Ben, I'm going to come back to you because you're the first one that asked me. For perfect competition, I just drew the graph. Like I said, I did not draw my ATC, so I don't have that part of the graph. But I want to make sure I touch on all the bullet points I gave you on that sheet that I just texted out, so that way you can be clear on everything you need to know for perfect comp. All right, the first bullet point: perfect competition market is efficient. A perfectly competitive market is efficient because we're producing, our price right here is equal to our MC. Supply equals demand. We're allocatively efficient because the social benefits of demand and the social cost, private benefits of demand and the private cost of supply are being met. So we're allocatively efficient, we're productively efficient, and our firm has no barrier to entry. It means anyone can compete whenever they want. No barriers for exit. Anyone can quit whenever they want the market. And all the products are identical. So those are characteristics of perfect competition. Now, when we have this graph, we know that we can identify things even in the tricky questions. Today, I pointed out some tricky questions to you where they would give you the price and the MC, and they would say, where's profit maximization? Because they're testing you to see if you know that MR and P are the same. Or do you know that D and MR are the same? And that's one of the things they want you to know about perfect comp, is that everything is equal. All right. The only other thing I want to focus on for perfect comp, I want to do the profit and the loss so you can see them clearly. So here is, it's pen. I don't want to have to draw the whole thing again, but I guess I will. Okay, so here it is at long run equilibrium because it's the easiest one to graph. So this graph is long run equilibrium because you can see right here, I'm equal to ATC. So at this point right here, everything is equal. Mr. DARP equals ATC equals MC equals Q. So that 1 point, everything on the graph is equal. That tells me we're at long run equilibrium. That means people aren't rushing to join the market. People aren't rushing to quit the market. Everyone is pretty much happy with where they're at. We're earning a normal profits, which to an economist is good, to an accountant is great. So keep that in mind. All right. A loss, Ben, I will come back to that in a minute. 1 minute. Okay. An economic loss would be like this because my ATC is above my price. So that means I'm selling the unit, say, for $5, but it cost me $6 to make. So I'm losing $1. And to graph the loss, we would go up and over and shade in the box. Shade in the box. That's a loss. Okay. I didn't regraph this one because I don't want to waste your time, but imagine that's right there. My next one would be an economic profit. Economic profit happens when ATC is below our price. So to graph that profit, what I would do is I would drop down from MR equals MC and come across where it touches my ATC curve, and I'd shade in my box. And this would be my economic profit. All right. So those are my different options. Now, one of the tricks of perfect competition, a lot of the times they'll ask you to go from a loss to long run equilibrium, from a profit to a long run equilibrium, from a long run equilibrium to a loss, or from long run equilibrium to a profit. So they want you to be able to go back and forth. In the little packet booklet that we got on Monday, yesterday, that's questions number 5 and 6. So what I would recommend is looking at those again. I don't know if we made it through in all of my classes graphing those because of the shortened bell schedule. I don't remember which question we finished on for each class period, but definitely look through those again. Okay, Ben. MR equals D equals AR equals P. Mr. DARP. All right. Let's start with demand. Demand is the measurement of how much a consumer is willing and able to pay for a product. Okay. So when we had the Hershey's Kisses, and I told you my price range was 5 cents to 25 cents. As soon as I found a Hershey Kiss for 5 cents, that set my market price. That set my price as a consumer. So I went around and I would buy every single Hershey Kiss that was 5 cents. If you sold for above 5 cents, you didn't get a sale. So my price was equal to my demand. Now, the reason this is equal to MR and AR is because of the formula. MR, marginal revenue, measures the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. So if I buy one Hershey Kiss for 5 cents, I have no marginal because I bought 0 at 0. And you can't divide 0 by 5. Now, what if I buy 2 at 5 cents? My total revenue went from 5 cents to 10 cents, okay? And my quantity went from 1 to 2. So my change in total from 5 cents to 10 cents is 5 cents. And my change in quantity from 1 to 2 is 1. So 5 divided by 1 is 5. Now because remember, marginal revenue is change in total divided by change in quantity. Okay. So Then when I went from 2 to 3, my change in quantity will be 1, and I'll go from 10 cents to 15 cents. So 10 to 15 is 5. So it's going to be 5 over 1. And then when I go from 3 to 4, I'm going from 15 to 20. So my change is 5 cents, and my change in quantity is 1. So with perfect comp, because the price never changes, MR will stay constant. Okay. Now, AR is somewhat the same in that you're increasing by the exact same amount every time. So 5 cents divided by 1 is 5. 10 cents total revenue divided by 2, which is my quantity, because it's average revenue is my total revenue divided by my quantity. So 5 cents divided by 1 is 5. 10 cents divided by 2 is 5. 15 cents divided by 3 is 5. 20 cents divided by 4 is 5. So it's always going to be 5 cents. So it's going to be exactly the same because it's a constant increase in the total revenue because the price is the same for every single unit, no matter how many you sell. Okay, beautiful. It's supposed to be okay. All right, so that is Mr. Darp. All right, phenomenal. Okay, all right. So those are MZ, yes, perfectly elastic because it's a horizontal line. I'm going to go back up to my comments and look and see if there's any new questions. Okay, no new questions. So I went through profit maximization, and perfect comp. If you have other questions that come up, let me know. I'm going to go through the topics for the test. I only have 1 through 14 written down. I'm going to have to go back to the test to look at 15 through 25. Like I said earlier, 25 total questions, 24 are multiple choice, 1 is an FRQ. All right, so I'm going to open this up over here in a different tab. Okay. All right, number 1 is asking you about, excuse me, I'm so tired, diminishing marginal productivity. And when does diminishing marginal productivity set in? When does it occur? So what it is testing is if you know how productivity is measured, how you find marginal productivity. Remember, marginal means change in. And if you know what diminishing productivity is. Can I go over long run cost and marginal cost? I'm going to make a list of this so I know what I'm looking at later. Marginal cost? Z, I don't know what you mean by marginal cost. Are you answering the question? It can be, but this doesn't give you a cost curve. This gives you a productivity table, and you just have to be able to find marginal productivity and figure out when it diminishes. It's basic subtraction. It's really simple. Next is number 2. Number 2 is talking about the average total cost curve, how you find your ATC. Number 3 and number 5 are both asking about economies of scale, and how economies of scale, what they measure and what they look like on a graph. Okay. Number 4 is asking you the difference between a short run cost and a long run cost. What's the difference? Number 6 is asking about economic profits. Number 7 is a profit maximization question. Number 8 is a profit maximization question. Number 9 is a profit maximization question. Number 10 is asking about profit maximization on a total revenue graph. Number 11 is a shutdown question. When does a firm shut down? Number 12, okay, so Number 12 is a complicated question. It's asking about the changes in the market. So it's similar to questions 5 and 6 on the little packet we did, where you're at a state and then there's a change and it shifts the market, and then there's a new price and a new equilibrium. So it's asking you, it's a multi-layered question. You have to understand the shifts. Number 13 is on firm behavior in the short run. And number 14 is asking you how you find a firm's supply curve, which I told you just a minute ago, if you were listening. Yeah, right there. I see it. Okay. I said it a minute ago. How you find a firm's supply curve on a firm's graph, not the market graph, the firm. Okay. Number 14. Now we're on 15. Okay. 15 is asking about loss versus shutdown, economic loss versus shutdown. 16 is long run equilibrium. 17 is profit maximization. 18 is asking about productive efficiency. 19 is another one of those shift questions, like the packet questions 5 and 6, the little half-page packet. If there's a shift in the market, how does that impact the firm? How does a shift on one graph impact the market and the other, the firm in the other graph? Number 20 is a question on scarcity. 21 is comparative and absolute advantage. That's back from Unit 1. 22 is on elasticity. 23 is cross-price elasticity. 24 is price ceilings and price floors. And 25 is the FRQ, which is all about cost curves. It's an FRQ on cost curves, on costs. It's a table, actually, not a graph. But you have to draw the graph. Oh, that's fun. You have to draw the graph. It gives you the cost curves, and you have to draw a graph. So that was the entire test questions. And so I'm going to go through. Okay. So Ben wants me to go over long run cost. Z wants me to go over marginal cost and sunk cost. No, just asking you to go over these topics. Okay. I thought you were trying to answer that question number 1. And I was like, that's not at all what question number 1 is about. So I'm going to go through these. Okay. So I'm going to start with the long run. So when you have an LRATC curve, our long run cost curves, the long run average total cost curve, the LRATC, is how we measure economies and diseconomies of scale, or constant returns to scale. And the LRATC curve comes as a result of combining all the minimum points on your short run cost curve options. When you're looking at the long run average total cost curve, what we are doing is measuring firm concentration, like how big should we get, how many should we have, where should we build, how should we expand, and would it still be profitable, is basically what we're trying to figure out. One of the things you have to remember, if you're looking at cost curves in the long run, all costs are variable. So we have no fixed costs in the long run. All costs become variable in the long run. So there's only one cost curve. The variable cost curve is your total cost curve for long run costs, because everything is variable in the long run. The only time we have fixed costs is in the short run. So that's when we have the difference between fixed and variable to equal our total. But in the long run, everything is on one cost curve. So that's there. I think I also have on here, I think that's it. That's really it. The graph, I am so tired. I'm so tired, but it's 10:15. That's okay. I have 15 more minutes till bedtime. So that's really the main focus of the cost LRATC. And that's why we only really look at long run average total cost curves, because there's no long run fixed cost or long run variable cost, only the total cost curve. Ben, if you have a specific question about long run cost curves that I didn't answer, let me know. Z, marginal cost. Whenever you see the word marginal, just remember that means change in. So marginal is just looking for the subtraction, the change. What changed between where we're at now and where we were before? So your marginal cost is the change in your total cost. Marginal cost is also the mirror image of your marginal productivity graph. So when your productivity is peaking, your costs are at their minimum. And when your productivity is falling, your costs are going to go up. If you think about it, it makes perfect sense because it's logical. If you're super productive, you're going to keep your cost really low. That means you're specializing, you're producing to your comparative advantage. You're doing everything you absolutely can to be as efficient as possible. So you're going to have cheaper or lower costs. If you're not as productive, your costs are going to go up because maybe you're paying people who aren't working, or people have less skills and they're slower. Anything like that can happen, and that can cause your costs to go up. All right. Sunk costs are the costs that cannot be recouped. And it goes to, no, Ben, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. They pay me to do this. Remember that. This is my job, and I actually like my job. I really do. I wish you guys would ask me more questions in class. I like talking to you. I will go over the graph, Ben, in 1 second, but let me finish this because it goes to diminishing returns. Yes. Total productivity will increase, but it doesn't always increase at an increasing rate. Sometimes it increases at a decreasing rate. And then eventually your total productivity will peak, and then your total productivity will fall. When your total productivity is increasing at an increasing rate, your marginal productivity is going up. When your total productivity starts to diminish, increasing at a decreasing rate, your marginal productivity will fall. And then when your total productivity falls is actually when your marginal productivity goes negative. There's a direct correlation in the graphs. Yes, Z. So, for example, the example I give all the time is if I assigned the music video and I told you had to find people to bring to your group. So let's say you start your group and you're like, you know what? I'm going to bring 10 points to this grade. You're going to look for someone who's going to bring more points. So then you go and you recruit someone and they bring 12 points. So you're up to 22 points on this project. You're like, this is phenomenal. We're going to get a 22. Let's go look for someone else. You bring in a third person. They're not as good as the second person because obviously you recruited the best person in the class as your number one. So the next person only brings 10 points to your grade. Our grade's still going up, but instead of going up by 12 like it did with person 2, person 3 is only bringing 10 points to the table. Now, you're still in a good spot, right? Because you went 10, 12, 10. So you're at 32 points. You're like, this is great. Yeah, your lyrics are due Friday. You're welcome. And then you're like, okay, let's get a fourth person, divvy up some work. Fourth person brings 8 points to the grade. You're like, this is good. Okay, 10, 12, 10, 8. We are now at 40 points for our music video project. Fifth person wants to join your group. You're like, okay, fifth person brings 6 points. You're like, 46. I can take a 46 out of 50. That's a great grade. And then you're like, you know what? This person over here, I feel bad. They're person number 6. They need a group. They come in. They don't really do much work because they joined late. They bring 4 points to the table. You're like, okay, 4 more points. That's a 50 out of 50. We are all going to get a good score. Now, you brought an increasing points to the grade. Person 2 brought you up another 12 points. Okay. But persons 3, 4, 5, and 6 diminished your returns, right? They increased your grade, but at a decreasing rate. Are you following me? I'm going to hope so, because they still helped you, but not as much as the first two people did. Then person number 7 is out there and they're really needing a group. And so you're like, you know what? Fine. Just join our group, put your name on the project. They didn't do anything. They brought 0 points to the table. You got a 50 out of 50 anyway. You shared your grade with them because y'all always let your friends coattail ride on your coattails. We're going to learn about free riders later on, and you're going to stop doing that. But you brought in person number 7 and they got you 0 points, but you were nice and you shared your project grade with them. So that means your total productivity is peaked. You can't get higher, right? 50 is as much as you're going to go. Then an 8th person walks in and they're like, oh, I need a group. I don't have a group. I'm going to fail. And you feel bad. So you add them in and you go to record it. And that person maybe, forgets to put the title slide or forgets to include the video credits and actually causes you negative points. They caused you to lose points because they promised that they would edit this video well and they forgot to put the credits on, and now you lost 4 points. So person number 8 lost you 4 points. So you were at 50 points on this project and now you're back down to 46 because person number 8 caused you negative returns. Persons 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 caused you diminishing returns. But that person 8, they messed with your grade. So that's where you're like, I'm done here. I don't want you in my group. Now, person 2 was when your productivity peaked. And when your productivity peaked, that means your costs were the lowest. Person number 7 would be revenue peaking because your marginal was equal to 0. All right, your change was equal to 0. So your total productivity peaked, marginal was equal to 0, and then you had negative returns when you brought in that last person. All right, so there's diminishing returns. Let me know if that's good. I feel like Ben, Z, and I are having this private conversation tonight. It's just us. It's okay. All right. Beautiful. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the LRATC curve, Ben. Okay, so the long run average total cost curve is the one that looks like this. It's very, very long because this is a note my kid's teacher sent home today. So I'm using this piece of paper because this is what I have on my table. So Mr. Thompson has, asked for hand sanitizer for the classroom. Here is the axes. Now, when I gave the example in class, what we talked about is if you open an Italian restaurant and you're going to open an Italian restaurant and have one location, SRATC 1. But then you are having to deliver your pizza all the way across town because it's so good and everyone keeps ordering it. And you're like, you know what? The time and expense of driving these pizzas all the way across town, I bet if I opened a second location to be cheaper. And at some point of production, it would be. So you're going to produce and produce and produce until you get to the point where it's actually cheaper to operate 2 locations instead of 1. So what you could do is if you were going to make Q1, hi, George Jr. If you were going to make Q1 product, you could either make it with 1 cost curve or with 1 factory or with 2. Now, obviously, the smart business owner is going to open that second factory and produce right there because it's cheaper to operate 2 factories to produce that level of output than it is to operate 1 factory. So here is the cost curve for 1 factory, and there's the cost curve for the second. So you're going to produce, and you're going to stay on the cheapest possible option. That's your goal. Then what's going to happen is, because it's a public video, Z, anyone can log in if they want to. All right. Yes, I am a teacher. What's going to happen is eventually you are going to here go with SRATC 3. All right, SRATC 3. There you go. Okay. And decrease your cost even more. Okay. So here's how that would look on the graph. And when you do this, you are going to be experiencing economies of scale. So if you can increase your output and decrease your cost, make more for less money, you're experiencing economies of scale. You're growing and cutting your costs. And eventually you'll get to a point though where your costs go back up. And that's called diseconomies of scale, where output increases and costs increase at the same time. So there is your LRATC 4 and 5. All right. Here is the LRATC curve graph. So there's the combination of all your short run average total cost curves, Ben. And then what you do is if you follow the bottom line, you've created what is called the LRATC curve, the long run average total cost curve. So that becomes the combination of all the minimums of your short run. And that's how you get that graph. It's the compilation of all the short run minimums. All right. So Ben, let me know if that graph works. Okay. All right. So unless you guys have other questions for me, I am going to wrap up. And I'm going to wrap up and go ahead and talk to you guys at school tomorrow. All right. Good night, Ben. Good night, Z. And I will see you guys tomorrow. No, I won't see you tomorrow. I'll see you on Thursday. Yeah, there's weird people on the internet. All right. Bye, guys. Write down your questions and ask them before the test on Thursday.